So today I'm going to replace the clutch cover, replacing the OEM Honda one with the Kitaco cover. There's a couple of advantages. One is that by doing this you get a regular cartridge style filter so that you don't have to go through the extensive process of taking off the clutch cover every time you want to change the oil. A few other advantages include having ports for an oil cooler that I plan to eventually mount up here, but by having oil port access it makes that process possible. And then it also removes the oil spinner, which is a couple of pounds. I'll actually weigh it because I keep hearing 2 pounds, but we'll see exactly how much it weighs. So we take out some of that rotational mass that should help with the engine spinning up a bit quicker. From the other videos I've seen from the Grom forums and YouTube videos, it doesn't look like there's a significant difference there, but it is an added benefit. So anyway, I'm going to pop this off first, and I've done it before since I just changed the oil. I'm going to try to recapture as much of that oil as possible since it's all, I don't know, 50 miles old, and it was expensive oil. So I'm going to see if I can capture as much of that as possible, and then put it back in the engine when we get the new clutch cover back on. But otherwise, it should be a pretty straightforward process. So first thing I'm going to do is drain out the existing oil, and then I'm going to remove the bolts that go along the edge of the clutch case. All right, so the drain plug uses a 17mm socket. With the oil drain, put the drain plug back in. Make sure you're using a new crush washer. All right, now we're going to remove the bolts that go around the casing. And before I do that, I'm also going to take off these bolts here on the rear set, move it aside. When I did the first oil change, I needed that to have clearance to pull this off. So I'm just going to pull off this nut and this bolt to set it aside. Then we'll pull the whole cover off. This top bolt is a bolt that goes all the way through with the nut on this side, so you need to use 2 socket wrenches, one with a 19 to capture the nut and a 14 on the other side to hold the bolt. At this point, don't pull this bolt out, because if you do, the rear swing arm will fall off. We're just pulling this one rear set off and setting it to the side, so all you need to do is remove the nut, and then this lower nut, I believe, is a 12mm. This bolt rather. We can just pull this off and set it to the side. I also placed an oil pan underneath this because once I separate this half, there is going to be some oil that leaks down, so be sure to do that so you don't get oil on the floor. Using a 5mm Allen key. Each one of these Allen bolts are the same length, so just make sure you don't lose any. You don't need to keep them in any particular order though. Alright, with this last bolt out, I can now pull off the OEM clutch cover. Be mindful, there's a couple of things on the right side here. There's 2 clips that were holding the OEM O2 sensor, and up here on the top is the clutch cable that you need to remove from this hole here, and it's then linked into this clutch mechanism. So both of those need to be released. Once that is done though, we can just pop this off. I also took off my carbon fiber engine protector and anodized oil filler cap. The carbon fiber piece won't work on the new clutch cover, but I'll put that on eBay, and the anodized oil filler cap I imagine will fit in the new one. So let's just go ahead and pull this off. Just a little bit of oil. Set that aside. And there's a number of pieces we need to use inside this. I believe this plunger and a few others need to be pulled off of this case. And I can't remember which of these dowels need to be used as well, but we'll figure that out. And then this is the oil spinner that we'll be removing, the thing that currently keeps the oil clean but will be replaced with a cartridge type oil filter, and then we'll be able to remove this big piece of rotational mass. So let's take a look at the package that I got from Hard Racing that should have the new clutch cover, and I also ordered the new fuel pump as well. So first things first, here's the Takegawa high flow fuel pump. This is the tool that's required to pull off the current oil spinner. And then here's the actual clutch cover. Before installing the clutch cover, please take a second to pop off the oil filter cover and confirm the spring is seated correctly behind the filter. When you remove the filter, you will see the spring in the back of the cover. This only takes about 30 seconds. Okay? It has a new gasket. And then here's the clutch cover itself. It also has the see-through window like the Monkey one does, so that you don't need a dipstick. And then this is where you can replace the cartridge type oil filter. And these are the two ports I was referring to, giving you access for an oil cooler. But the fit and finish looks pretty nice. I'd originally tried to order the silver one, but Hard Racing said that they were out of stock, and apparently there was an international back order on them, so I figured I'd go with the black. It matches with a lot of the other pieces on the bike, and if I do a big bore kit, I'm looking at the Takegawa that has a black finish too, so I think overall it should match well. So I need to remove the oil spinner, and it won't be going back on this time. Also, last time I took it off, I used a penny inside the gears to be able to prevent it from spinning as I was trying to ratchet this around. Somebody mentioned I should just use a tool like this to ratchet off quickly, and that definitely works. So now we can look inside the oil spinner. Again, more oil draining, so make sure that you keep your oil pan down there. And then we remove, there's a grooved slots in there to remove the oil spinner altogether. So you need a special tool, and it's something that was offered with the clutch cover that I ordered from Hard Racing. So let's see. So it fits just like that, and it has I think that's a 3/8, or maybe that's a 1/4 inch socket, so that you can just use a big socket to pull this off. So I'm going to use the penny again to hold the gear in place to pull this off. So slide in there. Keep pressure on it so it doesn't fall out. That's pretty heavy. All right, with that nut off, the oil spinner, there's a little gasket inside, or a washer, is off. So the weight of this oil spinner is 1,035 grams. So I think that's about 2.5 pounds. So quite a bit of weight, and it feels heavy for something that then doesn't have to be part of the initial spin of the engine. Hopefully makes a bit of a difference. So the next thing that I'm going to do now is a couple things. I'm going to replace the oil pump here, and I think that's just a matter of replacing these 3 bolts, taking this one off and putting on the new one. And since this is the last time I plan to really ever open up this engine, clean out this filter screen again. It's actually pretty clean because I, again, just changed the oil recently, but I'm going to go ahead and clean this off and get it back in, since hopefully we don't open this engine up, at least this part of it, again anytime soon. All right, and before I throw on the new oil pump, I need to install this these pieces that replace the oil spinner. So this main piece slips down the shaft. This is a little rubber grommet that goes inside the capture nut, and then there's this conical shaped washer that are all going to go in here. So let me just open this up real quick. This is splined and just slides down there. This washer has it says here out, so the cone facing outward goes next. And then this capture nut comes with this little rubber grommet that goes inside, a little cutout on the inside of this. So I'm gonna get this in here, slide it in, and screw it down. So as you're sliding this on, you need to take care to not let the grommet pop out. Make sure you can still feel it in there. And this gets torqued down to 47 foot-pounds. We're going to take off the current oil pump. This should slide off. And it has these two dowel pins here. The new kit comes with new ones here to accommodate the wider oil pump, so both of these won't be reused. Here's the new oil pump. So here's what comes in the package. At the top is the two longer dowel rods, and then the pump itself. All right, and that's flush. Then we just use the same stock screws. All right, the torque rating for these 3 bolts for the oil pump, as well as all the hex bolts that go around the clutch cover case, is 9 foot-pounds. My small torque wrench is in inch-pounds. 9 times 12 is 108 inch-pounds is what I have this into. All right, so I'm almost ready to put the gasket on. The kit comes with a new gasket. Just cleaning up the edges before I do. Also, notice that you need 2 dowel pins. One of mine was still stuck in the cover. One stayed inside this part of the engine, but there's one down here and one here, both that need to be on before you put the new cover back on. And before I put the clutch cover back on, I'm going to follow those directions that asked me to check to make sure that the spring was seated correctly in the oil filter housing. So using a 4mm Allen key, just going to loosen these two. All right. If you look here, the spring is seated in the center. I assume that's what it was wanting me to make sure before I turned it over for the first time. This is the filter itself. So it goes into the cap this way. And just make sure that the seat's centered. Okay, and the last thing that I need to do before I can put the new clutch cover on is take out the old device here to move the clutch up and down. This is what connects to the clutch cable, and put it into my new housing here. So I just pop that plunger off. And this just pulls out. So I just had to get this in the correct position to push it down far enough and then pop the plunger in to hold it. And now it's set up correctly that when the cable pulls on this, it moves this plunger in, which is going to hit the clutch, which is what we want it to do. All right, so now we're ready to put this onto the case and tighten everything up. All right, that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and get all the bolts on. Again, they're all torqued down to 9 foot-pounds. And all these other brackets that need to be connected as well. And then don't forget on this side, there's these 2 clips that need to be incorporated in the bolt that's holding on the case as well. Then we'll fill it up with some oil and start it up. All right, I got the oil back in and went for a ride. Everything feels great. I did have to make some clutch adjustments. My clutch lever here had a little more play in it than it's supposed to, and actually still has a little bit. So I backed it off a little bit. I think it just has to do with the placement of where the mechanism is here on the clutch cover. I'd like to say that it felt a little lighter to rev, but kind of hard to tell. The bike overall, with all the things I put on so far, is feeling much zippier than it did originally. But I don't really have too many objective ways to test it, particularly something like this where it's not actually a horsepower impact. It's, you know, how freely the engine's spinning up. Anyway, but it feels great. It looks great. I'm not sure if I've got enough room though for the oil cooler. The oil cooler bolts, banjo bolts here, are so close to this pipe that I'm just not sure if it would work. I think maybe I could angle them both down. Not sure though how I would wrap it around though to get up to an oil cooler around here without touching the exhaust. So I'll play with a couple of different ideas before I do that. Next up though, I have new rear sets. I ordered the Taiga rear sets for this bike, and I don't think I've seen anybody do that yet. I've seen rear sets set up on the Grom, but more aggressive rear sets on the Monkey is something that I don't think I've seen, at least on any other YouTube channel yet. So gonna get that in next. But anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below. Thanks.